What takes longer, moving a convoy or finding its rhythm? The answer explains why that bridge didn't just fall, it was chosen. In this breakdown, we start with the blast, then peel back to the observation. How consistent routes, predictable timetables, and guard shifts create a map of vulnerability. You'll see how planners confirm patterns, avoid decoys, and lock in timing. If you've wondered how a single strike can ripple through logistics, this is the missing context. Watch to understand not just the what, but the why and when. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Why did one convoy get caught while dozens slipped by? Because someone mapped the rhythm, not just the road. Treat that span like a pulse, not a landmark. Fuel trucks, ammo carriers, recovery rigs. Each moves on a clock tied to human schedules. Shift changes push departures. Depot resupply sets the next wave. Escorts slot in when crews are fresh, radios checked, and jammers calibrated. Over days, then weeks, those choices harden into a cadence. Watch long enough and you stop seeing traffic. You see cycles. That cadence creates a trap of timing. Strike early and you clip decoys or empty lanes, announcing your reach and wasting the shot. Wait too long and the high-value cluster clears the span and spreads into safer ground. The window is not a minute on a clock. It's the overlap of habits. Move too soon, you get noise. Move too late, you get scraps. So the surveillance stack stays quiet and patient. Commercial satellites mark lane density on clear days. Synthetic aperture radar fills the gaps when weather turns, reading mass and structure through clouds and darkness. Down near the water, AIS blinks around ferries and service craft, and those little disappearances say more than a public schedule. Up on the approaches, spotters count queue length by the number of light poles a line covers, then note if engines idle or shut down. None of it shouts. All of it accumulates. Weeks of notes add a research truth that commanders know but don't like to admit. Protection units prefer recurring departure windows. Guards, electronic warfare crews, medics. Everyone works better when they can plan sleep, food, fuel, and radios. Efficiency breeds regularity, and regularity becomes visible to an adversary who charts it with discipline. The map is not terrain, it's time. Fuel convoys add their own quirk. They move at night to lower thermal contrast and avoid daytime traffic holds. But stack enough of them in the dark, and you compress targets into a narrow belt. The engines come graded by heat, trailers glint in infrared, and the spacing shows which vehicles are tethered to a single escort net. What feels safer to the drivers builds a brighter line for the hunter. Open sources keep the ledger honest without exposing hands. A viral dashcam clip from a bored driver stuck in a queue pins a clock to a taillight pattern. Traffic cams scraping foggy frames still count axles by rhythm. Local telegram posts whine about wait times at the tolls. The timestamps become density checks. None of those feeds tell you who is watching, but together they tell you when the flow swells. Put it together and a pattern stands out. Tuesday nights deliver heavier outbound loads after early week depot restocks. Fridays carry another bulge before weekend manning dips. Maintenance blocks on the bridge push movements into tight corridors either side of work windows. Stack that with escort rotations and you get a repeating choke where security thins, trucks bunch, and recovery assets sit at the wrong end of the span. The strike rides that bottleneck. It lands as escorts rotate, when convoy density crests and the first two fuelers nose onto the span with limited room to maneuver. One detonation does more than tear concrete. It locks brakes across a line of high-value cargo, stalls recovery, and converts order into gridlock across the approaches. The blast ends a spreadsheet, the one that taught planners which 10-minute slice breaks the most things at once. But the timing had one more hurdle. You don't hit a rhythm just because you can read it. You confirm it's not bait. Counter decoy checks start the moment that window opens. How do you know a convoy is real when the other side is feeding you ghosts? Russian deception leans on clutter. They seed dummy tankers with empty drums, roll flatbeds under tarps, and tuck military trucks into civilian caravans. They'll push a few genuine vehicles ahead of a staged column, then stall them at toll points to bait impatient strikes. Even the lighting plays a role. Headlights dimmed to look like maintenance crews, hazard flash patterns that mimic civilian breakdowns. The goal is simple: force the attacker to reveal tools early or waste a rare window on cheap metal. That's why conflicting signals become a feature, not a bug. Radio traffic starts hinting at a protected movement, but the satellite pass doesn't match the script. Spacing isn't consistent with security doctrine. Axle shadows run light for the number of trailers on the road. A real fuel column keeps a cadence to manage blast risk. Decoys drift or bunch because the drivers don't share the same brief. If one layer says high value and another says irregular, the clock doesn't start. It slows. So the network cross-cues. Thermal sensors scan for tankers that carry heat longer after stops, because full fuel masses retain warmth differently than empty shells. SAR cuts through clouds to estimate bulk and shape, flagging loads that sit heavier on rear axles. Then comes traffic choke analysis. If upstream depots show the telltale pre-movement signs, shorter turnaround at filling racks, more forklifts on the night shift, and outbound gates logging longer open intervals, you have a system moving, not a stage play. Each source is noisy alone. Together, they settle into a verdict. Human eyes stay close to the ground without breaking cover. Residents near staging lots note the generator hum that runs all night to power pump skids and cabin heaters. They smell fuel and solvent in places that usually sit quiet midweek. That lines up with prior inventory cycles where depots thinned stocks before a push. Even the snack kiosks near the laybys tell a story. Their owners report selling out earlier when drivers queue longer, which tracks with actual convoy buildup better than any press release. Technical checks confirm it. Standoff drones, flying high enough to dodge routine jamming, clock average speed and lane discipline over several kilometers. Real convoys hold security intervals, keeping a measured gap that limits damage from a single strike and preserves maneuver options. Decoys wobble, close too tight on climbs, or drift across lanes because the escort commander isn't enforcing a playbook. Lane choice matters too. Trained drivers prefer the inner lane on spans to reduce exposure to shoulder threats, while mock-ups tend to take whatever opens first. Security rotations offer the crack to slip through. Guard towers show a telltale pattern. Lights dim, then flare as shifts change. Radio IDs swap in a predictable 20-minute cycle. During those handovers, discipline sags. Watchers look inward, not outward. The network logs this rhythm for weeks, then treats it as a metronome for action. When that 20-minute window aligns with thermal-heavy tankers and confirmed depot drawdowns, hesitation ends. 3 confirmations land within the same hour. Heat that matches loaded fuelers, inventory pulled down at the source, and a guard rotation ticking over on schedule. The green light snaps on. The strike meets the handover at the span's throat, right as 2 tankers roll onto the deck. The first blast locks their rigs in place, air brakes screaming, wheels angled, trailers skewed across the lane. Following loads pile behind the wreck, their escorts caught between doctrine and chaos. Recovery crews can't thread the gap fast enough, and every minute the queue freezes, the larger timetable stops. That hole isn't the story. The pause is. And that pause throws off resupply slots, ferry transfers, and depot shifts far beyond the Cape. The explosion mattered because the clock was the target. Patterns broke under pressure. Escort rotations offset. Depot drawdowns misaligned. Ferry slots missed, and drivers stranded outside fueling queues. Steel cracked, but schedules shattered. That is why recovery lagged and why follow-on movements lost their shield of predictability. When you see the next headline, ask what rhythm was mapped and who learned from the pause. If timing now makes more sense than impact, share this and watch how often the gaps repeat before they close. Bridges can be repaired. Habits take longer to erase. And habits shape routes, escorts, and every decision that follows.